Yes, good morning again. Welcome to this program of Pan-African Friday program that comes your way every Friday from the studios of UBC here on Nile Avenue in the heart of Kampala. Every Friday, we always come to your sets, we come to your social media, we come to your sitting rooms to share with you issues that concern this continent, the beautiful continent of Africa, where we belong. Today, we'll be looking at the continent of Africa, which should be a country of Africa. Looking at, is it possible that at one point we can have the country of Africa as it was envisaged in the thinking of the founding fathers of this continent, as Kwame Nkrumah and others who lived around his time. So today in the studio, as usual, my name is James Mututa. I'm joined by the usual panelists, Rachel Takali, Ndugu Irumba, and finally Ndugu. This man keeps disappearing and then appearing. Sometimes he disappears for weeks on end. But today, at least, Ndugu Rugarama is back on set. Today, we have him in the studio. So we'll be looking at that, what definitely means to us as people of Africa if we shall ever have a country of Africa with a border across maybe the oceans, not the imaginary borders that we are having today. But as usual, we begin our week with what has blended, what has happened, and of course, this week has been so eventful. I am sure my fellow panelists have a lot to talk about, what they experience and what they have seen happen on this beautiful continent of Africa and beyond, which of course with ramifications on the African population and the African continent. And to do so, I think I'll begin with Rachel to take us what she has gone through, what she has seen happen of importance to the people of Africa and the continent of Africa within the week. So please, Rachel, I'll give you this opportunity.
First of all, nearer home, we have the situation where school-going children were killed by a fire, and it's the latest of a tragic trend where children who go to school are actually killed there by fire, attributed to different causes. I think it's high time our authorities really became proactive, more proactive than they already are, in managing this particular situation, if not stopping it altogether. Also in this country, on a positive note, the authorities announced not long ago that they had put out of action a number of ADF rebels whose latest excess was the killing of 2 tourists and a Ugandan guide. Those ones are said to have been intercepted on Lake Albert before 6 out of 7 of them were sent to their maker. I think that will cause many actors in that industry to have a sigh of relief, and even further across the world where many were considering maybe even cancelling their travel to this country. So that in itself is a good thing for this country. Also related to this country, but originating elsewhere, is the latest move by the United States government against the Ugandan government, where they said they will not continue with them at this time, in as far as the African Growth and Opportunity Act is concerned. For me, as a Pan-Africanist, this is a grand opportunity to redo our relations with some of these countries, to actually be sober about securing our own future. These are partners, unreliable at best, emotional in other cases, but it is definitely a big wake-up call.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because if you have a neighbor or a friend who is emotionally unstable, then you have to suffer a lot of episodes on some of these issues that you may think are of important connection between you and the friend. But of course, some of these things, when they happen, like you said, they give us a wake-up call that look, we now need to think. Last time when we were talking here, we said the sanctions, the blockade on Cuba has helped Cuba to think from outside the box, but work from within, knowing that there's no help on way, but you have to survive. So sometimes this helps, and you know, I don't know why, but it will be within the discussions when we talk about Africa without borders. Ndugu Irumba, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Comrade Mututa, and we welcome our new member. Thank you. Now, two things have caught my attention this week. Number one is that the rest of the world has been coming to Africa to teach us how to take care of the environment. Now, yesterday, India closed the schools, primary schools. They have closed the school. Why? Because of air. The children cannot have fresh air. This has never happened on any part of the African continent. But they come here, especially this Western world, they come here to teach Africa how to take care of the environment. Now, it's happening in their own world, but they're not telling. It's not as loudly spoken as when they are coming to Africa to teach us on how to live with nature. So that is an example that we're actually better than you people.
But they will tell you that is India.
Yeah, but you see, all that, these are developed countries, and so India, China, Russia, America, Germany, UK, they're in that league. They always want to come and teach Africa here. So that's one. Number two, it's the AGOA issue that Comrade Rachel Takali talked about. America wakes up one time and says, we are going to give you ABC, we are going to give you market. Create an association called AGOA for Africa. We are going to give you market. They are the ones announcing what they're going to give us. Now, yesterday Biden says, I am closing. Do you read the mentality? That they are the ones giving you opportunities. Now, because they have refused to probably right on their back in terms of LGBTQ and homosexuality bill that we passed the other day, they want to rotate and pass there and come and say we are removing AGOA because of ABC. But the issue is the anti-homosexuality bill, the anti-homosexuality act that was passed. That is the whole thing. They actually don't mind how many people you will kill here, for as long as you allow what they call the minority group. They have even given themselves a name, minority group. You can kill as many majority people as you can, but minority group. So once you pass a law there, they will use every avenue to tie you up. And so they think by doing this, the country should kneel down and pray to them so they can open the taps again for us to enjoy. They have done this to Cuba. Cuba, instead of kneeling for them, they decided to look for other avenues of survival, and they have done so.
Oh, yeah.
They are not bothered. Since America stopped so much aid now, since the passing of Anti-Homosexuality Act, they have stopped so many things, including World Bank threatening of withdrawal. I want to ask you, the same conditions that Ugandans have been going through, nothing has changed. We are still going through the same. Yeah. Even when they were sending here a lot of aid, Mr. Comrade Council Dad
was still eating potatoes.
Yes, we were undergoing the same issues, same problems, same sufferings. That money you say you're sending to Uganda, it was actually a small clique of people who were benefiting. So there is this trickle-down effect. I don't see it. I have not seen why I should kneel down for America for cutting AGOA, for cutting aid. No, I have not seen it. If I've been having one meal a day, I am still having 1 meal a day. You get? So, it's about the time we got used to our own survival mode, and we devised means on how we can enhance on our own means of survival. Like Cuba has done. They thought Cuba would go and kneel for them. For decades, they have refused. They have refused.
Okay.
So that's what actually caught my attention this week.
Yeah, because like, and you're echoing what she also just said. Maybe this one might give us a better way of doing things. Supposing instead of looking at AGOA for the American market, and we looked at AGOA for the African market, have we even exhausted the African market anyway? But maybe because someone is giving us money, but to do what? Because these are some of the things then definitely when you look at, and we shall go in the deeper discussion about the Africa without borders. Maybe it's some time now that we need to reconsider some of our relationships, some of our dealings with some of the people we thought are friends, but you find out that the friendship is tilted to one end. And if there are no benefits in that kind of partnership, then that partnership may not stand the test of time. Ndugu Rugarama, karibuni. You disappeared for days on end, and finally,
I'm back.
yeah, we need to introduce him to the viewers so that they can understand
Thank
that
you so
Ndugu
much.
Rugarama has not gone.
Yeah, thank you so much, Comrade Mututa. First and foremost, I would want to thank you, comrades here in the studio, Comrade Mututa, Rachel Takari, and Irumba, for keeping the program very, very alive. And while I was away, about I think 4 weeks now, I would take time and watch. And you guys, thank you so much once again. It is of course not true that Comrade Mututa didn't know where I was, because hardly a day passes without us communicating. So the public, please, you don't mind Mututa.
If you didn't know.
He can, he can be that stubborn. But nevertheless, the weeks, because I have noted a few things. One, there is the Bararo question in northern Uganda. And I think it has been on and on for some years now. But some politicians, unfortunately, blow it out of proportion. I watched the Frontline last night, and I was astonished by the comments of Comrade Caps Fungaro. I don't think, from the Pan-African point of view, from the patriotic point of view, that is where we want to take Uganda. I know for a fact that the issue of what they call Bararo in northern Uganda can better be handled, because there's nothing new in Uganda, in the sense that we have had and we still have other parts of Uganda with the people who are not necessarily the originals of that place. And the examples are bound. When you go to Chibare, these areas of where my brother comes from, Irumba, we will find a number of Bachiga there. And at one time, I think one even emerged the LC5 chairperson. Although in my own assessment, I didn't like the way he was treated, because he said, no, you being a Muchiga and the Wanyoro are complaining that you have emerged the winner. I think you leave the seat where he was democratically elected. I want to believe, as I conclude on that issue of the Bararo in northern Uganda, that we have better mechanisms, because although when a project, a nice project is progressing, you may find there are people in northern Uganda who are not necessarily the originals there, and probably they have not acquired land properly. But the way it is being projected in the face of the Ugandans is as if there is mass movement of people who deliberately and without any justification wants to grab land and settle there. I don't want to think that is the case.
But comrade, if you can allow me.
I will
In
not,
my-
I think the issue of Balalo shouldn't be discussed
Oh.
here.
And I'm not
We'll have-
discussing, it is my, because it is,
I wanted to put
Yeah,
a right there.
because many of our viewers who are not in Uganda may not understand the dynamics we are discussing.
No,
but maybe
the issue, Mututa, the issue, and really I will not discuss it. The issue here that we should be looking at is that we have got movements within the country and outside the country. And since we are looking at borderless Africa, I think we could not have gotten a better moment than this one to talk about those movements. And I want to conclude on that by saying that even our constitution itself allows people to move. When you go to the EACA Treaty itself, it is about free movement. So we should be encouraging the movement, but regulated movement within the law.
maybe you
That's
don't
it.
move with your cows to eat people's food.
Absolutely. You
Well-
see, movement, but finally, because I was just making comments of what I have seen within. Then there is the issue of the nakedness of Western Europe and America. It has been exposed even more with what is happening in the Palestine. The confrontation, the human rights abuse of the state of Israel to the Palestinians has exposed the masqueraders in America and majority Western Europe that they all along they have been pretending about human rights. There is absolutely no justification whatsoever for anybody, even if Israel was a cousin to America, to keep a blind eye in the face of the so-called right to defend. We are no longer talking about the right to defend in the situation of Israel, Palestine. We are talking about gross abuse of human rights. And finally, I have also noticed, of course, what is happening with the Arab world. I want to believe that you cannot take somebody for a ride for such a long time, because I have a fear that especially if you watched what happened in Cairo, the conference, I have a fear that if this Israel activities go on for the next 2 weeks, something very ugly is going to emerge from the Middle East.
Yeah, but like you are saying, I think no two wrongs make one right.
Two wrongs can't make one right.
Yes. And the issues and which we discussed last time when we were here, that the aggressive behavior of the Hamas, of the other fighting groups in Lebanon and Syria should also be taken into consideration when we are talking about Israel, because Israel is not also going to sit down and say, okay, you have attacked us, but God of Israel will protect us. Apparently, it doesn't happen that way. But it is true that the Arab world also needs to, while we are talking about the Western world, the Arab world also needs to sober up. That there are certain decisions that have to be taken out of the emotions of religion and maybe the economics. Of course, the world moves on economics, fine, but we can regulate these interests so that everyone is accommodated in their own way. Because when you look at the two conflicts, I mean the conflicts of the both sides, of course in any conflict there is not the right person. If you are right, then you would have had a conflict. So these are some of the things maybe that need to be looked at in detail. All said and done, we also have had, of course, as a country, a lot of things that have happened. But now I think we go straight to the issue of the Africa we're looking at without borders. Can we have an African country as the Union of Africa, according to Kwame Nkrumah, the Union of African States, that will have one with a political, with a center of political influence that can radiate to the rest of Africa and to be able to take decisions without having to go through these smaller borders. But of course, I think to be able to get to, if we can have a borderless Africa, we first need to look at how we came to have borders in the first place. Because if we identified how we came to be divided with these small borders of where those smaller units, then we can be able to know if we can have at all an African country that without borders, or it is still remain a myth to the African country. So I think I will begin with Rachel again on that one. First of all, how did we come to have these borders, and was it the weakness of African state? Was it the interests of Africans also, because according to President Museveni, some of the African chiefs were also collaborators in some of the things? And or was it that this, up to now, we cannot resolve the issue of boundaries, of borders, that we are able to continue being governed even after the colonialists have left the continent?
Well, history is rather clear concerning how this came about. We know that in the dying years of the 19th century, the colonial or colonizers, whether that be Portugal or England or Britain, whether that be the UK, it wasn't the UK at the time, whether you're talking about Germany or France, they were in a cycle in their development trajectory where they actually had to step up sourcing of raw materials. Because remember, they were really newly into this industrial phase, and they needed a combination of human beings, and they needed also to have the materials to run their outfits. So Africa came into the mix because they could not think or live with the idea of enslaving fellow men or fellow women. So they thought that Africa was the right place to do such a thing, because many of that era were of the opinion that black people were not actually human beings, and they spent all kinds of money proving that we are not as human as they are.
To date, yes.
But that was something that preceded what you're talking about, the demarcation of the boundaries. They came variously over a century or two to parts of West Africa where they sourced these people to run their plantations. But when they entered the industrial phase and they needed materials to run their factories, they needed to have a guaranteed source of these things. So they came, some of them in religious garb, pretending that the spiritual man is who they really wanted to boost. But we found out at the end of the day that in the British example, after the missionaries had made had led the way, cold, hard mathematics took shape. It became a case of pounds and cents. In some cases they said dollars and cents, but in this case it was pounds and cents. and they made sure that among them they would be amply supplied. You see, when it comes to the colonizer sharing the spoil among themselves, they don't really have major issues because they figure that the pot is the same, whether the white man is in Australia, whether he's in New Zealand, whether he's in South Africa, they feel they're of the same clan and heritage. So as a result, they sat among themselves and said, look, we have identified a really sustainable source of the materials we need. Human beings also.
Yeah, of course, they were part of the materials. Yeah.
Yes, part of the materials were human beings. To make sure that you really do not encroach on my territory. You, the German, there is no need for you to compete with me as a Frenchman, and there is no need for the Englishman. There is enough land, there are enough human beings, enough minerals. So the boundaries were really to secure their part of the loot. It was never about for the good of the African. No, no, no. It was a case of stopping unhealthy competition for the resources, whether those be human or whether those be diamonds. And so the Frenchman carved out his part. The Belgians carved out theirs. The Germans also. The Portuguese and some others. And that particular approach to the African continent served them during their colonial time here. But unfortunately, because they did not live according to a tidy plan, one day the black African, who was supposed to be brainless, began to agitate. And they said, look, we want to take charge of our own resources and our own destiny. And so because they left unwillingly, I'm not aware of any colonial territory where the colonizers came to themselves and said, look, I think for your good, handle your affairs, bye-bye, until next time. It was always a question of sustained pressure, in some cases armed rebellion. So they left rather untidily. And because it was an untidy arrangement to begin with, I'm talking about borders, it was untidy, no one was consulted among the people they found there, because it was always for the benefit of the other man. He
Sure.
never co-opted any African in this bid to ring-fence resources. So also when he left, it was not a cordial situation, it was not a genuine exit. That is why they have hung around until now, this time in a neo-colonial garb. So you asked, how did this thing come? Some men and some women sat in European capitals and decided to think for us, decided to impose themselves, decided to extract as much as they could, as long as they did not compete one with another. So, of course, not to compete with your neighbor, you need something separating the barriers.
Yeah.
You need a barrier that will keep the gold in your pot from being taken by your neighbor. So these boundaries were never about Africa, and because they were not about Africa to begin with, they are still not about Africa today.
Sure. Now, you know, it was, like you said, in most cases, a lot ugly, because we have seen this happen. When you look at Somalia, you divide it in the Somali, French Somali, Somaliland, the British Somalia.
Also in Cameroon?
Yes, Italia, Somalia. You go to Cameroon, you create the French Cameroon, and you have the English Cameroon. You go to Ethiopia, you create Ethiopia, you create Eritrea, and you create Djibouti from the same communities. You go to Nigeria, you create Niger, and you have Nigeria, but the Fulani are the same, the same people.
It spread even to Cameroon.
Exactly.
You remember that legal battle?
Yeah, yeah. So if then you go, you have the new and the new of Ethiopia and South Sudan. So these are some of the effects that we still suffer up to today. And then you arm these people against one another.
To secure the resources
Exactly.
you need.
So that as people continue struggling and fighting, you have the resources. You have the Congo, divide it into two. The other time when we were having an operation there, someone was telling me, no, I'm in Kinshasa, what do you do? Let me now jump on the boat to cross to Brazzaville. You see, same people. But you have made it in such a way that the two people, the Congolese in Brazzaville and the Congolese in Kinshasa cannot see.
And the Samia.
Exactly.
And the Gishu.
So these are some of the evils we are talking about. Viewer and the people in the studio are trying to look at this, some of the effects that stand with us up to today. And if we are talking about then the borderless Africa, can this Africa, is it possible, is it doable, is it invisible, that in the future we can have this a country known as Africa, according to late Kwame Nkrumah, who thought that we need a union of African states, and this union should have a central government, and this central government should be the center of influence. Ndugu Irumba, do you see that happening in our lifetime?
I think to begin with, it was a good dream by Kwame Nkrumah.
And they call it a dream.
Yes. And it was for the good of Africa. First of all, the colonial masters found us here one united Africa. For their interests, they started scrambling. So they started dividing to take care of their interests.
Maybe we are not united, but we were one.
I think there was unity. Because even if you remember, fighting these colonialists to eject them from African continent, there was a semblance of unity. If you remember, that countries had to come together. That's why the Kwame Nkrumahs are remembered, having Kwame Nkrumah said, if Ghana is free, but another country is not free, we are not free. That was already a sign of unity. And so, even up to the time these people were kicked out, I can't say that there was total unity, that they had to agree 100%. There was some level of togetherness, because the enemy was a common enemy. And so, when you see the resistance that was put up by the colonial masters, and then you see the resistance put up by our forefathers, you really see that it was a very big task. And I want you to remember also historically that they could not have succeeded in colonizing Africa without the collaboration of some of our own members. They couldn't have succeeded. So what did they do? They picked a few, the kings, some people they presumed to be elites or more understanding than others, and they gave them powers, and they gave them resources, land. That's why here the Kabaka of Uganda has even they are still demanding 9 square miles. From another group of people in Africa. So, in a way, they had to make these ones realize that by us being kicked out of Africa, you are also losing, because we have given you. Once we leave, you will not be able to protect the loot we have given you. So they had to confuse as many people as they could, as many authorities as they could, to ensure that they sustain their conquest here. So now, do we benefit from this? No, we do not. Africa will benefit more from a borderless Africa. That's why United States of America is powerful than the rest of the world, because they are United States of America. That's why European Union, that's why UK, they are powerful because they are united. So, does the white man ever want this to happen? Of course not. If Africa became united, then I think the biggest raw materials in the world that these developed countries are using are from Africa. How do they exploit them? Because we are not united. If we were united, we wouldn't be saying that those minerals in Congo are for Congolese. Therefore, if I'm Ugandan and the Americans are stealing it, it is not my business. The Niger war would be a war for the Africans. The Libyan war would have been a war for the Africans, not for the Libyans. Yeah. And so since they conquered Libya, you can see that they are stealing from African continent. Okay. So they're not going to allow us to unite that easily. But then we should not give up, because there is nothing that you're going to win in this world on a silver platter.
Sure.
Yes. So in conclusion, I think that it's incumbent upon us to ensure that we work for the greater good of Africa. The issue of uniting Africa cannot be more emphasized than now. All the indicators that are very eminent in Africa, all of them, the problems we are suffering, they actually point to one thing, that we can only overcome certain issues in Africa if we speak in one language. And that's why even when we start forging speaking one language, UNESCO says, I am going to sponsor Kiswahili. That is one language trying to unite you. UNESCO says, I am the one going to sponsor Kiswahili, a common language in Africa, that we want to unite Africa. UNESCO is already positioning itself to say, I am the one going to sponsor you, even without you asking. Same thing happened when they came here and they realized that we needed market in America. America said, we are going to give you AGOA. You know, they are the ones suggesting for you. Meanwhile, their interests are vested within. Now, once you don't take care of their interests, they come and announce, now we are taking away. So, shouldn't there be a negotiation? Shouldn't there be a timeline? If we have a contract with this one is a lawyer. He knows that if we have an arrangement between me and Comrade Lugaram, either party to cancel it, there must be a timeline. He must even write it officially and give him time to prepare himself. But America comes and calls the press conference and says, we are removing this.
That only works when...
How do you exit?
How do you exit an arrangement?
That works only in a formal marriage where you have gone to church and you have taken vows. But in other marriages where there are no documents signed, the willing and the willing and the unwillingness may not be an issue. So maybe we have been in these marriages which are...
In the case of AGOA, only that we are not debating AGOA. The truth of the matter is that there are certainly formal agreements. Yes. And what is happening, what America is threatening to do in one word is best described as sheer arrogance.
When we come back from the break, we're going to be looking at that and we see if the African state is still viable, and if it is viable, it is of course, but is it achievable? Are some of the questions that we'll be discussing when we come back from this break. Please don't go away. Be with us at UBC, the big network, and informing people, please.
There is a
of the day on UBC.
One-on-one with Michael Jordan Lukomwa.
A weekly face-to-face conversation focusing on accountability, inspiration, information, and sensitization of the public from the various sources, such as inspirational profiles.
Having disability is not inability.
Every Friday, 9 p.m., it's one-on-one with Michael Jordan Lukomwa.
Don't you see anywhere that you would give a credit in the fight against COVID?
My role as the owner of the country is not to, be preoccupied by giving credit to my servant.
We have said that if we are to talk to General Museveni, there must be certain conditions in place.
Is it true that you paid 5 million shillings to MPs that voted for?
Was brought to you by MTN Momo Pay is the easy way to pay. Dial *165*3# or use the MTN Momo app. You don't need cash. MTN Momo Pay is safe and free.
Nkwanga Ramazan is my name, the head teacher of this great school, Ikumbia Seed Secondary School. The school has the staff room well furnished, administration well furnished, the computer lab well furnished, the library wonderful, the multipurpose hall well furnished. The teachers are also enjoying in the staff quarters. The school has teachers totaling to 28. Ikumbia Seed has embraced the new curriculum. I want to thank the government for that bright idea. There are many students that end up in senior 4 with no document. But with the coming of the IT, the skilled children are going to have certificates in skills as early as senior 3. And that certificate is equivalent to a senior 4 certificate. Ikumbia Seed Secondary School is a very great school that has influenced the lives of people or changed the lives of people of Ikumbia sub-county. I want to thank the parents and the government for this kind of input.
Back to the program. By the time we left the set, we were talking about the double standardness in some of friends that
do you think the debate even went for a break?
Yeah, but what happens then is that I think Africa, we need also to be more organized. At one point we were discussing, I said, what happens if we also call it a bluff, or if we said we are now sanctioning someone, a head of state, or a government, or an administration from coming to Africa? Can't we do it? We can.
We
definitely.
Can, but I think one of the barriers that we've had, the most important barriers we have, are internal. We ourselves have not determined the threshold of how much pain we are willing to accommodate. It involves a lot of pain, by the way. So Cuba took that decision to take as much pain as it takes to maintain their dignity, to maintain,
for you.
to stay on course. We, on the other hand, have never decided what that cost is.
Because we have to worry about the next election.
True. Whenever you have not made that decision, you cannot withstand the pressure. Countries that have done this, you may say, well, that is no example to bring, but there is Eritrea. They are called a pariah state. Maybe they are not even perfect. But they set their standards concerning what they cannot accept. In fact, one of the people who are not in AGOA is Eritrea.
Eritrea has not been in
even the African Union.
If you remember very well, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area it is Eritrea actually
Yeah, up
the
to now.
only remaining country when the rest had ratified, which was still outside. But anyway, like Rachel is saying, this borderless Africa and some of the decisions that we must take, where you are referring to Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and his dream, he had to take a decision along with his Casablanca group. And that kind of
But I think you saw where it ended
attitude,
up, the cost.
that attitude, he paid for it. Now, do I have the floor?
Yeah, we
I
were
wouldn't
coming,
want-
because
Yeah,
actually we were
Yeah.
coming to it in the way that we are looking at your end. We are now saying loud that is the African state, the African country, of course it is viable, but is it achievable? That's what
Okay.
we are discussing.
Now, borderless Africa is our topic. Historically speaking, it would not be correct for us as analysts to say that we didn't have borders on the African continent before the advent of the white man. The kingdoms and the chiefdoms that existed then had specific borders. And maybe the issue there was, unlike how it became when colonialism set in, how were we treating our neighbors when they would come to our different kingdoms and chiefdoms? That if this was Bunyoro Kingdom, Buganda Kingdom, Asante Kingdom, Dahomey Kingdom, how was the relations? Because at one time, when you read the writings of whoever you want to look at, be it our own Dr. Clark, John, be it the writings of all these prolific African writers, they will tell you of how one kingdom would overrun another kingdom, how a chiefdom would merge and become a bigger chiefdom after overrunning other, meaning that it is territory that would be conquered. So in terms of borders, we certainly had borders, but the way we related to each other in our own original African setting, with those borders, there were more, not a restriction in terms of movement, but they were actually, we were prospering in our rather diversity kind of format. But maybe what is also of critical importance is that this is what happens. What is this Africa that we are talking about? When you look at the current statistics now, the Africa out of the many continents that we have is estimated to be 30.37 million kilometers squared. I also have issues with that kind of computation. I was telling my brother Irumba some time back on NBS that computation, we need to have our own to make sure that we counter that kind of, because the Africa as geographical area certainly is much bigger. And when they do that computation, they also tell you that therefore Africa occupies in terms of total space of the entire world 20%.
Which is not true.
Which is not true. I want to put that one in my rough estimation at well over probably 37 to 41% in terms of what Africa actually occupies. Then this is the Africa now we are talking about. When we say borderless Africa, what do we mean? Where are we? And what is our size? And largely, like it is greatly captured, this particular Africa is a home to the mainly dark-skinned, what they call black people, mainly. That does not mean that we do not have people who are not necessarily black or dark, but they are also on the African continent. So, what is this that we are talking about now? The Kwame Nkrumah with the Casablanca group saw it then that the Africa, which unfortunately had been divided into areas of influence by the 1884-85 Bahrain Conference, and partitioned amongst the whites, who, like my sister Rachel has correctly diagnosed, their interest was simply to have the take and protect their take after partitioning, such that the French do not extend now to say Nigeria, and they can remain in Niger. There was nothing for the benefit of the person who was being colonized or for who was partitioned at that time. These were just geographical spheres of influence for purposes of benefiting the colonizer and making sure that these thieves, a group of thieves, they were at peace.
They're stealing.
There is no thief that would enter into another territory of another thief to steal from there unless under special arrangement. Because you saw, even after they had stolen, like in Tanzania, then they kept exchanging. Even when Leopold, for instance, had taken the current Democratic Republic of Congo, then later he ceded it to the country, now Belgium. He's just a thief handing over to a wider group of thieves.
And also Germany after the war handed over to another thief.
They kept exchanging. But bottom line to this really is that when Kwame Nkrumah and his group, the Casablanca, and then the Monrovia group had not reached a reconciliation. They hadn't agreed whether to have the United States of Africa in the format in which Dr. Kwame Nkrumah had proposed. And the Monrovia group succeeded in having that loose coalition. It became a problem that but of course you remember, they had also agreed not to tamper with the artificial geographical partitioned areas, because they in their wisdom, they said it was going to create further problems, so they didn't want to inquire there. That is why, because the question would come, any serious historian and analyst or political analyst would ask, but now, the beautiful ideas that Kwame Nkrumah, the Ben Beras of that time, the Abdul Gamaras of that time, the Orumpios of that time, the beautiful ideas they had, how come that they never came with the idea to dismantle the artificial geographical partitioned areas which the white man had? They thought about it, and they made a resolution about it. And what was the resolution? Let us not tamper with the partitioned areas. Let us leave the countries the way they are, as they were formed 1884-85, but we can overcome that. How did they want to overcome it? Borderless Africa that we're talking about. Exactly. Ndugu Mtuta. This is how they wanted to do it. According to Kwame Nkrumah and the group, they thought that if they, for instance, left Addis with one army, with one currency, with one president, to start with, for those countries that had regained independence, it would set a precedent that whoever would be coming in as a newly liberated country or leader would follow suit. Because his fear was that if we keep the way we are going to get used to the comfort of being president. They open for you, they cook for you, you get a plane, and then we are going to defeat the dream of the United States of Africa. He was not wrong. Even Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, who opposed him at that time, along with his members of the Monrovia group, later, so much after the death of Kwame Nkrumah, he went to his grave and he apologized for having made that mistake. Therefore, later now, when you have the African Union came up with what actually should have been done during the 1963 conference. What did it come up with? It came up with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, in which the Africa Continental Free Trade Area espouses to deepen the intra-trade that now Uganda can trade more profitably with Morocco, we can have Tunisia trading more profitably with Tanzania. The regional groupings, economic regional groupings we have, like ECOWAS, East African Community, EACA,
Yes.
like
Nduguru,
all those.
Nduguru Garama, I think I'll add information on that.
Yes.
Because you are bringing out a point which is very crucial and very cardinal. When in 1963, when President Kwame Nkrumah was addressing the African, then
The leaders there.
yes, of the of Africa, the independent states of Africa, he brought out issues which actually even today you are talking about the free trade area. It's not a new idea,
No, it's not.
because Kwame Nkrumah in that meeting said we don't have to leave this meeting unless we have agreed on the following. One of them was that let's have the ministers of foreign ministers of the independent states of Africa to sit down and have these commissions. He recommended a commission to work on the trade, the market,
Trade,
the African
foreign
market
relations.
and the trade. He recommended a commission on the African foreign
The foreign relations
policy
with other
and
countries.
diplomacy.
Yes.
He recommended, I think I put some of them here, he recommended a commission on the continental communication system, because then Africa needed to be communicating within itself to be able to address a number of issues. A
True.
commission on defense, that we need to have one defense, and also a commission on a common African citizenship, a commission on the currency, but also importantly,
That citizenship now
The
is
monetary-
the one that would be giving us one passport.
exactly.
Africa, one passport, like
Yes.
this.
One currency.
Yeah.
Yes, and
The-
the one currency would not be suffering. Actually, you are very right.
He didn't only recommend the African currency, but also, which is also very important, he recommended that Africa must have a monetary system.
Do you see, therefore, that had that been implemented, the borderless Africa that we are talking about now would have been achieved without necessarily physically dismantling the artificial borders that were created by the
Exactly.
1884-85
So back to
Berlin
your point,
Conference.
back to your point.
So I thank you for that information. Very, very important. So therefore, when we missed that opportunity, as proposed by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and I have always said that Kwame Nkrumah's paper presentation at that time, there were other beautiful presentations, by the way, including the president of Central African Republic at that time, who later sold out, as history tells us. He later sold, but he had a very powerful presentation.
No, that's Africa for
But
you.
I want to assure you that after we had missed that beautiful opportunity, and remember, the white man at that time, by the way, was at work. Don't think he had gone to sleep, because he is the one who had entered into the emperor. He had gone to the emperor and convinced him that he shouldn't actually board a plane and go to any other country, and he shouldn't be sitting with the rest of the so-called liberated countries, because for him he was an emperor. And that is why, in the wisdom of Kwame Nkrumah and the group, they went and held their meeting in Addis Ababa. Even in the proposal which the Casablanca group made to have a borderless Africa at that time, was that we can have just a capital city in Bangui. And it was a proposal. But he was like, I'm open to other
Yeah, because
ideas.
for him, had said the Central African Republic, or I think the other.
He said
capital,
any other.
Brazzaville.
Yes,
and
he
was
said
something-
any other, there is no problem. And indeed, we ended up having it in Addis Ababa. But that's not the point. The point I want to make is that even after we had missed out on that beautiful opportunity of having a borderless Africa at that time, because borderless in the sense that it would be defeated by what would have been achieved, for instance, if we are talking about one currency. It means that you will not see a fundamental difference between somebody in Nigeria using a different currency or somebody in Kenya using a different currency. That would have been achieved. Borderless Africa. We would not be fighting to defend ourselves would not be having issues of extreme lack of solidarity and fighting a common enemy, because there would be one army. We are now grappling with a standing army, African standing army. That would have been sorted out. Nevertheless, later, because you can see now we are going back to the old play. Later, when we get the African Union, and we come up with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, look at what it proposes to achieve. And it has been operationalized, by the way. The issue of the currency, the problem is that we are losing a lot of money in the exchange rate. Now we have got what we call the Pan-African payment mechanisms, mechanism system, whereby you don't have to have uniform money or use a dollar in order to trade amongst ourselves. If it is Kwacha for Zambia, and I'm here in Uganda with the shilling, we still can trade.
Yeah, but still it can be problematic.
We are coming to that, because you see it is a gradual.
Last time we were having an operation in Brazzaville, for example, and we were sharing with colleagues here that we had the MasterCard. Now, when you get to Brazzaville, they say, you know, the 5 countries there, that Central African Republic, they have a different monetary system.
It's true.
Which they are using the CFA, which is not compatible with the other systems, either from the European side or from the other side.
We still have so many problems, Ndugu Mututa, to the extent that even when you carry your charger now, and you were in DRC, and this one is a three terminal thing. I want to bring the challenge to that level for our audience to see that what we are talking about is not rocket science. There is a problem that you may fail if you carried your flat iron. You may fail to iron your clothes because the wiring system, the plugging in and the plugging out, does not comply with your flat iron, which is made by Britain.
But also,
the codes we are talking about, let me finalize maybe on this, and then my sister can come in. So the point we are making, we are talking about here, is that, look, the errors that were committed during the Organization of African Union, the loss we had in not adopting the Casablanca led by Kwame Nkrumah is now slowly being ratified and, being corrected. In the sense that these regional economic groupings, like we have mentioned them, are only coming up to buttress what we have as Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which is addressing issues to do with communication, addressing issues to do with deepening trade, such that we can lift the miserable in African intra-trade from a lower than 20%. It is now standing at 27%. And I think it is in the same light in which our brother senior President Ruto was coming up with one passport and also removing all the visa restrictions on whoever African wants to come to Kenya.
We'll come back to Ruto's statement, but Rachel's coming in. Now, before she comes in, Rachel, you also realize that we have, now, again, back to the Casablanca group, we have 8. Because one of the things that President Kwame Nkrumah was pushing for was to remove the blocks so that Africa could be one force, can have one front line to be able to stand in fighting colonialism, because by that time the people in South Africa still had issues.
There were only 27 independent countries.
Yeah.
South Africa is even a recent example.
A baby.
It was nowhere.
Exactly.
Apartheid was well under arrived.
Rhodesia then also still had issues. But now we have 8 of these blocks. We have ECOWAS, we have the Maghreb, the UMA up there. We have the East African Community. We have the Central Africa. 8 of them on the African continent. Are we moving ahead? Are we going backwards? I think that was the point she wanted to come in with.
The point I wanted to come out with is the fact that we're at a stage where countries or individual leaders are seeking to go ahead of whoever else. Whereas the greats of the past, the Nkurumas and the Nyereres, sought to move as a bloc
Sure.
in reaching these grand ideals. In recent years, and of course, a case in point is the actions that have been taken this particular week by Kenya and then by Rwanda. Rwanda also yesterday said they are going to do the same thing, remove all visa requirements for each and every African. But I think there's a realization in Nairobi, there's a realization in Kigali, that if we wait for a consensus, it will be 2 centuries in the making. They realize that there are some people, on account of their peculiar interests that are selfish in every way, they will never sign on. There are some people who will give you the impression you're moving together, but their actions are at variance.
Exactly. I know a number of Africans.
One of them is fairly near here.
Not
Don't
very far.
mention, don't mention.
No. If she does not mention, I will mention with an example. I will mention with an example.
Okay.
Uganda and Kenya were working on the joint plan for petroleum importation from the Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Kenya undercut Uganda, went ahead and signed those agreements alone. And Uganda now is looking forward maybe to get another plan.
Tanzania.
So
Okay.
that shows that while we, and in fact now that you've brought
And then,
it-
of course, there's Tanzania along the same lines.
Exactly.
Where you and I, if you want to work there, you have to part with, or to stay there doing certain things, $100 a time, at a
Exactly.
time for that visa. And then if you leave before the duration that you had stated, to re-enter, another 100.
$100.
And that is the stage which we have
Yeah, but-
already gone above.
Yeah, that is what I'm
according
saying.
to
But
our EACA.
again, it's the same President Ruto who was here recently talking about the borders.
Yes, that is why I'm saying that you're talking about, is this feasible?
So in other words, you're saying Ruto is double standard. Here he's
No,
talking
we're not
about-
talking about Ruto as a person. We're looking at the African behavior.
Yes,
but
their
you're-
behavior.
But you're giving
You-
Ruto
you-
as an example.
Yes,
That
but you're
Ruto-
going
that
even
Ruto in the
further.
open is saying we should have a borderless Africa, but at the same time, he's asking for...
We have not,
But
we have
even
not
before you
said
go to
that.
the same
We have
side.
simply made a statement.
Yes.
You take your conclusion the way you
No, we're
can
talking
conclude the
about
way you
this
want to
variance.
In fact,
conclude.
I can even add to that.
You have not said
During
that.
You have not said
last
you
week,
have made a
last week,
statement.
But you have not said
last week there was the conference in Brazzaville of the basins, the Amazonia and the rest. President Ruto talked about the Africa working together, having the unity amongst Africa. But when President Tshisekedi came, immediately after him was saying, how do you expect us to build bridges? Because that's the statement that President Ruto really brought out. Said, how do you expect me to build a bridge with Rwanda, who is committing atrocities in my country? I should actually build a wall.
In fact, you're exactly where I was. There are some actors who believe that when you're in the same space as these kind of people, you really have to run with whatever prize, whatever deal that you can make between you and whoever.
Exactly.
Because these people are wasting time. Look at a man like Ruto. He was there in Brazzaville, declaring...
President Ruto, His Excellency.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was in Brazzaville talking about, okay, we as Kenya, we are moving forward. By the end of this year, we'll have visa free. Before he left Brazzaville, the URA of Kenya, they announced that without delay, they are going to up their tax measures on those entries that will follow this announcement. Even before the man returns home.
Exactly.
Now you wonder, are these political leaders in charge of their bureaucrats? This one said, thank you very much. And you know why they did that? Because the average African, you've traveled, every last one of us has traveled. If you see the man with 3 big bags on a cart, that one is an African, whether he looks white or Asian. If you see a mama with more than she should, than her carry-on luggage. That one for sure. She's from here. She has carried plantain in the African style. She has
Gonza.
grasshoppers.
Gonza.
She also has the shoes that the daughter forgot when she was going to New York. She also has the coat of the son, his beloved coat. She's now taking it, even if it is too thin for the winter, in Moscow. She has also taken it. As a result, she has 5 bags. 3 of them now, Kenya wants to tax 3 of those bags because they know the nature of the African traveler. Now, why did you proclaim things that you're not willing to do? Now, if you're an actor in Kigali and you have such partners, it is incumbent upon you to also reach your arrangement, because this one is not serious. Borderless Africa has been defeated by unserious political leaders. It is not hard to implement, but these partners are responsible for choking this infant.
And I normally ask this question. Sometimes people think I'm being cynical. Do we blame the colonials for this? Do we blame the West for this?
They have their part, but we have since overtaken them in our sins. Our sins are more than the colonizers.
No, that question, by the way, Comrade Mututa, you have asked it before. Yes, and not once and not twice. But like Sister Rachel has partly explained, the truth of the matter is that certain things are being done by your imperialists. And if you do not wear thick lenses, you will not be able to see what they're actually doing. Just have to dig deep into your education system. What is your education system like? That is one. 2, because the education system and your lifestyle is greatly influenced by the imperialists. What Rachel was explaining here, the desires, somebody shapes your consumption habits and you don't see it easily, but somebody is influencing your consumption habits, and the only thing you do, you turn around and look at a fellow African. They have reached a level where they do no longer need to do it themselves. They have trained the black man so well that he perfects the work for the white man. They are even spread. Ministries, non-government organizations, Bank of Uganda, they are everywhere.
Because, again, we'll be talking a lot about Kwame Nkrumah, because he had a lot of the thinking of what we are implementing today, centuries later. One of the things he was saying that we do not need a loose arrangement of African states where the weaker will be at the mercy of the strong ones. What he preferred,
survival for the fittest.
Yes, what he preferred was a system where the political power is centralized, that you have a central government which will be able to radiate the power and the capacity to the rest of Africa, and we shall have one voice, be in the UN, be where we shall have one diplomatic line on our foreign policy, and we shall. So all of these things, I think someone trashed it, including Mzee Nyerere, who thought the man was being so ambitious. Of course, having studied in the US and the UK, I think when he came back, some people thought he was being very ambitious. But I think, in all fairness, if what this man proposed was taken serious, then we'll not be having these discussions that we're having
Actually,
today.
that shows you that Comrade Kwame was too visionary, that he could see 100 years from where we are seated and others could not. That's why even he said from that moment we should live here when we have one united Africa.
Exactly.
Others said no, let it be gradual, but gradual.
Even today,
when someone entrenches themselves, you see, if you have this territory here, now the subjects of this territory are going before you. Then you hear Kwame saying, no, we should have one Africa. It means you're going to lose your territory here. And you may not succeed in becoming the leader of that bigger Africa.
True.
So you say, I would rather remain here in a small district here called a country. And the people can bow before me. You get, I can collect my taxes. I can have my good life. I can be called His Excellency.
Information, Mr.
So-
Comrade Rumba, information. The credentials of Osejefo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah in the Pan-African Rim are further fortified by two statements he made. One was a statement, another one was an act.
Yes.
What was the statement? That the independence of Ghana is useless if the rest of Africa is not
not,
independent.
yes.
That was one. Two, what was the action? The action was his relationship with Abdul Gamar, whereby he went and picked a wife from, and at that time you can imagine, we picked a wife from Egypt, and even you look at the children, by the way, those daughters and what have you. You know?
Kwame.
That was the
Are you
Africa.
saying there were no? That is the kind of Africa that
He
you
wanted.
are looking at.
Yes. So now he couldn't go far when he started saying now through the Minister of Foreign Affairs was supposed to sit down and come with a constitution that will govern, that will now usher in the government of the Union of African States.
Are you aware that his writings were burnt by the Stunge who was brought?
Exactly.
All his writings were burnt. They didn't want those writings to come into intercourse with the African mind.
Exactly.
They burnt. And that's what the colonialist does. The imperialist is very vicious. That's what he does. So the borderless Africa that Comrade Mtuta has took here, that he has brought, can only be achieved. It is not, by the way, it is not a walk in the park.
No.
That is the first thing. But also important to note is that borderless Africa can be achieved through progressive legislation and action. When we say that this is East African community, and these are the 4 levels, we have, for instance, we have not even achieved the common currency.
Exactly.
We have now pushed it.
Not even the common
We
market.
have not even achieved the common language.
No. That is not one of the good. We are talking. It is. We are talking about. We are talking about the layers, the
Yes.
4. But you see, the most important thing is that it's important in life to realize that I have got a disease. When you know you have a disease, you begin working on curing, looking for the medication. The good news to me is not that we have failed, for instance, to achieve a borderless Africa. The good news is that we realized then, through the Kwame Nkrumahs, that we needed a borderless Africa. We didn't achieve it. It was reenacted way back in African Union by the formation of Africa Continental Free Trade Area and these regional economic groupings to achieve a borderless Africa. We have challenges, numerous. We have started here, we have debated the challenges in East African community, we have discussed in IGAD challenges, in ECOWAS challenges everywhere, but the good news is that we have now realized that yes, Kwame Nkrumah was right. We didn't achieve it then. Now we are on it. Whether it is going to be achieved in our generation, the point is that at least we have realized we need it and we don't have it in the fullest, in the manner in which we want it. It is work in progress.
Rachel was saying something.
I think for me, something happened this week that underlines the issue of borders or lack thereof. While some of our leaders are working towards the realization of Nkwame's dream to collapse the borders, this week I have to remind you that King Charles made a journey to this part of the world.
He was in Kenya?
Very much so. I want to let you know that he was not there because they have beautiful animals. I have to let you know.
Why was he there?
He wasn't there because the scenery is wonderful.
Good food.
No.
Hey.
He wasn't there because they have good trees. He was there to safeguard his borders.
Hey.
Oh, yeah. These borders, of course, these borders you're talking about.
Hey.
Remember that his country,
So he had come to supervise.
of course, to make sure they don't stray too far, because Mr. Ruto has been quite naughty. Yes, he has been quite naughty.
He
Talk
has come
about
to put some Castopa.
overthrowing the dollar and I don't know, inviting all Africans. The man is getting ideas.
I saw the hug he was giving this Mzee Wakazi, Charles,
Raila. Huh?
the way he was greeting Raila Odinga. I was like, ah,
So,
okay.
unlike them, you and me, first of all,
So the point I'm making is that he has come to put some stop on his mouth. Please go
not
slow.
directly, but they have their ways.
Of course not.
Yeah,
directly.
yeah, okay.
The idea is Kenya is not dear to him, really and truly. But what is dear to him about Kenya is the fact that Kenya was the seat of colonial power in this part of the world.
Yeah. in the
It
East
still
African
has the
community.
most important vestiges or the most important roots of that experience. He not, it's usually Nduguru Garama who talks about arrogance. He declined to apologize for the excesses they meted on the people of Kenya in their independence struggle. He said he regretted.
Even the killing of Leonard Kimathi.
Now, why did you come this far to
Simply
tell us about your
regret.
regrets?
Why didn't you make a phone call?
Isn't that abusing the people of Kenya? How dare you come
No, you wanted to
as the
come
head of
physically
state?
see him so that he apologizes. You know that facial expression. When
I
makes
said he
a
did not
call-
apologize.
He
No,
didn't
he
He
apologize.
expressed his regrets.
He regret.
The people of Kenya said,
it's also an apology.
please,
no.
no,
It's not.
But
not in
They
their
are
language it
different.
isn't.
Isn't.
He said, look,
When someone says, I regret, it doesn't mean that,
in the white man's language, it is not an apology.
hey,
It is an acknowledgement of the happenings, but that's about it.
I wish he could speak in Swahili. Maybe it could have helped us to understand.
No, it is not useful.
No, it is not. You
because
see,
you will get his point in
even
the end.
Rachel,
But-
take this information. We are at a time when we are organizing the slave trade reparations. This is the move now on the African
So he
continent.
has come to blunt that
You see-
movement, to show that, look, we have realized this is a man who came at a time when Belgium, the Netherlands actually, found it within them to actually apologize. And the king of the Netherlands is the one who did this one. He said, look, we were wrong, we did everything. This one has failed to find those words, but is the one trying to keep your borders intact. Also this week, the president of Germany, well, this one was in Kenya, this one was in Tanzania,
Yeah.
which at some point was a colony of Germany. This one went further than this man of England. He went to Songea, which was the capital of where the worst excesses were meted out on the people of Tanzania,
colonials.
as they tried to resist the German colonial design for that country. But while he was there, going to see the Mau Mau Museum in Songea, and of course with a sharp eye on the resource base, that eye is always open, on the diamonds and on the gold, because Tanzania, since the days of Magufuli, is trying to run away. Simultaneously, in Nigeria and in Ghana, the Prime Minister of Germany was there again propagating their values this very week. So while for you you're saying, please bring down the borders, these ones are busy saying, please keep them.
Maintain them.
Saying, Kenya, please give lip service to the East African project. But let's enter our own agreement, you and me, Britain, your mother. Let us enter our side agreement while going to the East African community and saying, please, we are together. Germany, have your little agreements with the rest of the East Africans, but let us meet and do our thing, Germany and Tanzania.
Exactly.
So,
And for me-
for us to think these people have let go is a fallacy.
Well, they are
So,
never.
That is
so
why-
behind the
that's
camera,
why-
they are signing some,
Of course
some
they are.
contracts that do not seem to agree with the East African community. But in the open, they say we support.
We are together.
Yeah,
This is
because
exactly what the
we
president-
are talking about the Africa without borders. Africa,
Borderless
Africa. The problem is not even, we don't even need the apologies, because the apologies are not going to give us food at the end of the day. But that,
No, it underlines the fact that
They have realized they are wrong.
you're not to that level. You're not worth an apology.
that
But
happens.
you're only worth giving
don't
me what you
deserve.
have. Only giving me stones and minerals.
Exactly. But now, what happens is that I think, like we were saying, that notwithstanding, the leadership of Africa must be sober. apparently, even during Kwame Nkrumah's time, not many of his contemporaries were in his support. You remember the Monrovia group and Casablanca group. Some were saying, let's move now. In fact, Kwame Nkrumah was insisting, we need it now. We need the African Union now, the African Union of the independent states now. So then we can be able to move as one group and be able to support our brothers who are still struggling. Others were saying, no, you know, these things, we need to go gradually so that we can, maybe chapter by chapter, let's form the blocks. But the years later on, you realize that maybe that was the opportunity that we had to use to achieve the dream of the African state. Well, over time, things have changed, and we still have had different actors and different leaders coming in. But like Rachel was saying, the colonialist has kept tabs and has kept the position and has kept focus. The African people seem to be disorganized, and that is an advantage to the colonialists. So I was coming to Ndugu Irumba, because when we are looking at this at one point, we realize that our economic systems are defined by the West, by our colonial masters. Whether you are using the shilling, you are using a kwacha, you are using what, someone somewhere has control over that. And like Rachel put it, I think France doesn't even have any shame to quote you in the broad daylight, and I will tell you without fear or shame or anything that this is what I want you to do, and you'll do it. And we have seen that until recently now, people are still paying colonial tax to the French. So can we have, even within the African Union, which Ndugu Irumba, Rugarama talks about, no dog or sleeping dog, can we have a position that Africa can take, at least on one thing, that we shall be able to stand together and rally all our support as African countries?
To begin with, when you say countries are still paying some tax to their former colonies, actually, Uganda here, where we are sitting, we still pay money to Tsogam. We still pay UK. They collect money from us. But the leaders of Africa will not tell their citizens, because even them, they know that it's wrong. But for reasons well known to them, they have kept this a secret, but we are paying. Most of these African countries are paying their former colonizers. That's number one. Number two, when you say that all the African, the 54 currencies of Africa, every country in Africa has a currency. There is someone who measures the weight of your money. It is measured against theirs. And your money here should have been backed by your resources like gold. Huh? They come and plunder this gold, they take it there, and so, according to them, their money weighs higher than yours. But they are weighing
against nothing.
Against nothing. But for them, their basement is that they have gold reserves.
Where?
In their countries. But deposits of gold that have been stolen from Africa. And so they say, we are rich because we have more gold reserves than you. And so that is how they weigh the weight of their currencies. Now, the unfortunate thing is this one, that 54 countries, 54 currencies, all of us, for decades, we have allowed that someone with a weighing scale to say you are Rwandan francs, you are Ugandan shilling, you are Kenyan shilling, you are it is the other one with the weighing scale. The one who is stealing from me is the one who is holding the weighing scale. And so my money should be weighed against his scale. Nobody has argued that, whose weighing scale is that one and what is the basis? No. All of us are simply in the cocoon following. Now, Takali brought it very well. When you see this King Charles coming to Kenya, it is because of the bad mouthing that Ruto had started. I call it bad mouthing according to them, not that I agree with them. No. According to them, Ruto is trying to awaken the people. So, merely, these people, by simply coming in your country, even if they didn't say anything, Mr. Mututa, if Charles simply came into Kenya and sat down, without saying anything, and started taking his coffee, these African leaders would start saying, what is he looking for? Where have we gone wrong? What can we do to make him happy? These African leaders. And so, you will realize.
I'm told they put for him a carpet in the park.
Yeah, a red carpet, yes. You saw it.
Imagine.
You saw it. It's not a hearsay.
I like Africans.
Do you think
it's not a hearsay?
Do you think that if you went to a park in central London in the middle of winter,
Hyde Park,
they would put heaters in the park because of you?
No.
They will not even allow you to visit there.
So, African leaders are trying to what do we do to make him happy? Why has he come? What is it that annoyed him or mesmerized him to come? What can we do? Themselves, without anybody talking about it. Then when he leaves, now here Ruto now standing to make a press conference. Africa must stand as one. Africa must be. But when King came, why didn't you tell him? Why didn't you show him that you are as important as me? How many red carpets have they, Kenyans, put in that park?
No.
Why is it only
they went for the inauguration. No, was it the burial? The burial of the king, of a queen.
In one pot.
Yes, and they were put on a bus.
Yes,
kabandole.
one pot.
Yes.
Yes. What we are talking here is not because we are trying to undermine someone, but also I think we need to realize that Africa needs, like I think Rachel who put it, the Cubans have stood all that pain because they want to prove their dignity.
60 years and still
that as
counting.
people
And still
also
ready.
have a dignity. In fact, many African countries were up in arms. How can you collect all African heads of state and you put them on a kabandole?
In one bus.
I don't like talking of Toro now because
No, they used it to be a bus.
Yes.
Which is a double
that is a
decker.
Toro word, the Kabandole.
No, but as you
Let
said,
them see me.
Yes.
as you said, this undignified way of doing things, because as you said, it's unthinkable. When the people of Kenya are agitating, these people abused us, they killed us, they took our land, they butchered our women, they dispossessed our children. And you can honor such a man who is refusing to apologize. It shows how much dignity we have left.
Ndugu Rugarama.
You have not allowed me to conclude my point. And this new face has been using a lot of So, in conclusion, Comrade Mututa, if you allow me, much as we want to blame our colonizers, but I think also we need to work around our mindset. Just imagine that a man comes in the forest, he knows the forest, he knows the park, and somebody puts a red carpet. It has never happened. It has never. It is happening for this King Charles. Now, when you go to his country, for burial of his mother, he bundles you into a bus, Kabandole bus. When he comes into your country, you even want to leave your bed and give it to him. You get it? What do you think is in the mind of that Charles King? What do you think? What do you think he's thinking about Kenyan leadership?
The concept of inferiority complex.
Yes.
I think it is one of the
Actually, there are three
reasons.
things. The Africans hate themselves, the way they appear. If they are black, like me, they want to look like a red. Africans hate their civilization. They will try as much as possible to
Where is your civilization? You see, the point is, the civilization which you call yours is not yours. Where is our civilization?
Because
our
you hate
civilization
it.
was hijacked.
You hated it.
We don't have it.
Who told you to stop?
But no. The truth of the matter is, when we are talking about borderless Africa, who is the enemy of the borderless Africa? The enemy of the borderless Africa is the imperialist. And I think this is what,
at work?
and this is what this panel has been laboring to explain, and I hope we have really given our audience what they deserve. The truth of the matter is, the borderless Africa is not going to be achieved when we still have the Bretton Woods institutions, which are in IMF and World Bank, which are crippling our trade relations. We don't have trade. We have got aid. Countries, our former so-called direct colonizers, not coming to us for trade, but coming to us to give us aid. As long as we do not trade amongst ourselves and improve the less than now 27% intra-trade on the African continent, we are not going to achieve the borderless Africa. If we do not decolonize our mind, this thing you are talking about, self-hate, having abandoned our civilization, it has got a lot to do with the mind. If we do not work on our education system to make sure that we decolonize the mind, we debunk the information that has been given to us, which is actually wrong, whereby everything white, if there is such a thing as white anyway, is viewed as beautiful, and anything less than white is evil. We are not going to be able to have an independent reincarnation of our old civilization to improve it, and that civilization taking us to another level. The borderless Africa we are talking about can only be achieved when the African mind is decolonized, the education system is indigenous, the trade relations are improved, we dictate our own democracy, and we do not have to take orders from anybody.
No orders from above. Thank you so much, Ndugu Rugarama. Thank you so much, Ndugu Irumba and Rachel, for the deliberations. Apparently, our time is up. But we thank you, the viewer who has been with us for all this time, on behalf of the panelists here, and also on behalf of the production team that has been behind the cameras to bring us this broadcast to your sets and your social media, wherever you are following us. Until next week is when we shall again be back with another topical subject to look at on behalf of the African continent and the African people. Well, thank you so much for being with us, and on behalf of my companions also thank you and wish you a nice weekend until we meet next week again on Friday. Thank you so much.